So we will actually go to the second diagram. So in the first diagram, so you can see there are 4 ports. Each of them are 7-bit or 8 bits wide. So this last one, RD/3.6, should be the correct one, but it is okay. So this was taken from one of the books, and there is a printing mistake on that book. But anyways, so that's why I always refer to the data sheets, because they have always a mechanism to update with the correct information. So you can see the corrected information here, okay, in this particular diagram. So there are 4 ports, as we discussed: port 0, 1, 2, and 3. Each of them are 8-bit wide. And then that means there are a total of 32 input output pins, which are assigned as basically input or output. We call those output input lines as ports. So port is a line where we can exchange data from outside world and the to the internal part of the microcontroller, and vice versa. So there are different variants of 8051 that came up over time. So you can see 3 of them over here, and also we had discussed beyond these names or these numbers. We also talked about the power supply pins, which are VDD and ground, which are located in diagonally opposite positions. There are some control lines like reset, EA, that is external access and programming voltage, address latch enable / programming bar, or PACN signals, that is program store enable signal. So we had covered this. I'll just quickly go over. Then the standard 8051 offers 4 kilobytes of read-only memory. Now this read-only memory may be flash kind, this may be EEPROM type, or any other non-volatile memory. Whereas the standard 8051 also features 128 bytes of random access memory. This is a static random access memory type that we discussed. There are 2 timers in the basic version, but there could be even more in some other variants of 8051, like 89S52 offers 3 timers. There are 32 IO pins or 4 ports, but there are advanced 8051 series microcontroller where you can get even more than this. Even less than this is also there. So both are available, but standard 8051 offered 32 input output lines. Now serial port, this is the asynchronous serial port called UART, Universal Asynchronous Receiver Transmitter Port, which is a serial port, like the COM port in your computer. In the even USB is a serial port, but here by means of serial port we mean only UART port. Okay, but there are again modern microcontrollers in 8051 which offers USB and other types of serial ports. Then there are different interrupt sources. The interrupt means the processor is working or executing a code, and now if you generate a disturbance in the flow of the code, that means it's a logical disturbance. So we call that interrupts. Interrupt means while the processor is executing a program, and now we are actually requesting in between, before the execution completes, if we request for another operation to be serviced or another program to be executed in between, and then we call such operation as interrupt. So interrupt means it's equivalent to you are doing some work and someone is interrupting you to do another task for the time being. Then you have to do another task and then come back to your original task. So that is how interrupt in microprocessors and controllers also work. So this is actually a very generic kind of features that we had studied for 89S Okay, can you see my slides again?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Internet is getting disconnected, or I'm having problem with network issue also today, unfortunately. So please bear with me. So there are different types of RAM capacities, like the size of the RAM of the random access memory size is different for different microcontrollers. With 51, it is 128 bytes, that is 128 into 8 bits RAM. And for 52 series, or 89C52 or 89S52, it is 256 into 8 RAM. Likewise, there are different timers and counters, 2 or 3. Then there are different processors. So this Boolean processor is basically, it's the same processor, but the only thing is that it does only digital operation. But there are modern basically modern MCS 51 series, microcontroller series 51 products, which can offer even a little bit of analog facilities also. Although the processor inside is digital, which is a Boolean kind, but there could be some analog features which was originally absent in 5880 series. And then there is a fully static operation. Static operation means once you start the chip or the microcontroller, it will keep on operating consistently, even if you keep on applying power without any interruption. So that is a static operation, the meaning of static operation. So now this static operation is different than the static power and dynamic power, obviously. So we can explain that later also. So how static and dynamic power consumption are associated with any microcontrollers. But here the static operation means if you keep on running it without interrupting power, it will behave in the same way uniformly. So that's what they mean by static operation. Then there is low voltage operation. So there could be different voltage ranges over which these chips typically operate. So that means you can operate at standard voltage like 3.3 volt or standard voltage of 5 volt. Even very recently, modern 8051 series can operate even at 1.8 volt and even lower voltages. But obviously, the technology node, that means 180 nanometer or 350 nanometer, so those kind of technology nodes are different. So based on technology node, the power supply voltages are determined. Then memory addressing capability. Although the internal memory is 4 kilobyte ROM plus 128 bytes RAM, if you consider 51 only. However, you can connect external memories such as up to 64 kilobytes. And that 64 kilobytes, so will go as per the address mapping that we discussed in one of our earlier slides. That through address mapping, we can accommodate up to 64 kilobyte. That means 0000 to FFFF. So let me find out the older slide. So I mean here, this diagram. So we discussed about memory mapping. So 0000 up until FFFF. So this is 64K location in binary. Okay, so that means there are 16 bits address. So this is, you can think of this address range for 8051, where let's say the first 4 kilobyte is for the flash memory, and then there are other memories like RAM or internal registers. So similarly, basically similarly here, so we are meaning we are trying to say the same thing, that 64K kilobytes actually of RAM, ROM, and other memories can be combined together. So that's the maximum addressing range or maximum addressing capability of the microcontroller. Then to power control, so there are different ways to reduce power consumption. So like you can play with the clock frequency. So by reducing the clock frequency, you can effectively reduce dynamic power consumption. So there is an equation: dynamic power equal to C VDD square F. Okay, so dynamic power is, so now F is clock frequency and VDD is the supply voltage, which is any one of these 22.7 or 5.5 or between. And then C is the capacitance. Now capacitance could be the load capacitance or the capacitance or the parasitic capacitance offered by the microcontroller itself. So by controlling the clock, so look at the equation, dynamic power consumption is C VDD square F. So if you change the clock, F is clock frequency. So if you reduce the clock, your dynamic power will be reduced. Or if you stop the clock, obviously your dynamic power will come to zero even. So that's what those features are exploited by changing the clock signal. So there are different low power modes, such as idle mode. That means the processor is on, clock is on, but it is not executing any code. So that is idle mode. Also, there is a power down mode where it doesn't do anything. The processor just goes into sleep mode, total sleep mode. No clock, nothing is active, no program is executing. Now, there are different logic family compatibilities that are offered, like CMOS, complementary metal oxide semiconductor, and transistor logic, TTL. So this TTL is a bit obsolete these days, but CMOS is very much active because CMOS has taken over TTL logic advantages these days. But typically TTL means 5 volt and 0. So logic 1 is 5 volt and logic 0 is 0 volt. Whereas CMOS has all sorts of voltages. It can operate at even 1.1 volt or even 0.6 volt and so on. So CMOS can offer hundreds of millivolts until even more than this 5 volt, actually even 10 volt. So it depends what is the length of the transistors being used in your microcontroller. So while fabricating the microcontroller. Now there are different speed options available. So based on the families, based on the internal design, so the clock could be, the maximum clock could be 16 megahertz or 33 megahertz. Now you can say that this kind of frequencies are pretty low. So how does it compete with the modern microcontrollers? Obviously 8051 series is a bit older series, but due to its low power and some advantages in very small space within very small chip area, you can fabricate this kind of microcontrollers. And if you have you can obviously go to higher frequencies very easily these days, but the point is again dynamic power consumption. So you cannot reduce dynamic power consumption if you go up in frequency. So that's a limitation. Obviously you can play with the voltages, power supply voltages, because in that equation that I just told you, C VDD square into F. So F is megahertz. So if you, that's why modern phones actually heat up during, if you play games with it, because it ramps up the speed. And in the modern phones, actually, although they don't use 8051, they use ARM mostly, but you can also play with the clock frequency. So clock can be scaled up or down based on the range. But traditionally 16 and 33 were the maximum frequencies. Now there are different package styles we have seen. There could be extended temperature ranges. So there are 8051 series microcontrollers used in space applications or satellite applications or even medical application, undersea applications, and then used in extreme temperatures like in Arctic and Antarctic regions. So those extended temperature compatibility is very important. So that is possible through some internal design compensation apart from simple transistor based design. And there are dual data pointers. During the block diagram, I mentioned that data pointers are specialized registers, 16-bit registers, which are used to point to the data space in the memory. So you can use RAM and ROM both in the memory address range, but RAM is typically used for storing your data. And for pointing data, something like program counter is also there in 8051 called as data pointers. And this data, there are two data pointers. That means you can point or you can indicate two different data regions in the RAM memory. So we'll see the application with coding. So I think at that time, this data pointers and program counter will be clearer to you. Now, there are security bits. Security bits means there are certain locking bits. It's like a simple lock with a key. So suppose we have a house and we are going out. So what we do, we generally lock our house from outside and then take the key with us. So why it is required? Because you don't want any intruder or any external person to enter your house. You want to secure your belongings. Same thing with the microcontroller. Here you want to secure your code, your program, which is stored in the flash memory possibly or the ROM. So for that to happen, so there are different types of different levels of security. So in some microcontrollers, they offer only ROMs. That means if you lock it once, you cannot open. Even the owner cannot open. So it's like you are locking your house and losing the key. You have to break the key, obviously, break the lock if you want to really open it. But you cannot really break open 8051, so you have to damage the chip, obviously. So that is basically ROM, one-time programmable, 2 bits. And then OTP, basically one-time programmable OTP and this ROM are pretty much similar, but there are 2 versions of OTP, you can say, because read-only memory, there is no write option, or maybe there is only one-time write option. Okay, so one-time write option is definitely present in OTPs or even simple old-day ROMs. But EEPROM, electrically programmable read-only memory, EEPROM. So then EEPROM version you can actually erase, but again these days these security bits are again replaced with flash versions. Okay, and even more number of bits are sometimes offered because more than bits, more combinations are possible, and it's not just combination of bits, but there are basically mechanisms. There are some steps to read your internal flash or ROM memory after you store, after you enable the security bits. And then there are encryption IDs. Encryption, basically, encryption and decryption are different types of security, data security mechanisms. So while you send data or if you store data, so then the data can be done stored in a raw format or sent in a raw format. But in addition, there could be ways to add some extra information along with your data just to make sure that your data gets protected. So encryption and decryption, basically, these are the ways to secure data by modifying your original data and then again modifying that before reading by the authentic sources. It's like you're writing a letter and you're writing, instead of using postcard, you are putting it in an envelope and closing the envelope, sealing the envelope and sending it over through courier. And then the other person who is receiving the envelope is opening up or tearing up the outer envelope and reading the letter inside. So the encryption is like that. So while you are writing a letter and putting it in an envelope, that is encryption. And while someone else is opening the letter, so that is decryption, opening the envelope and reading the letter. So encryption, so in microcontrollers, this opening and closing the outer cover of the letter is basically done by means of certain data patterns or bit patterns. Basically, you are actually putting some extra information along with your data, which actually scrambles your original data, and such that if someone directly reads, they cannot make any information out of it. But there is a way. So if you are sending it to someone and you tell the other person that how to descramble or how to rearrange original data, so that is decryption. So you can actually gain your original data, so from the scrambled form to the original form. So there are different ways. So up to 64 bytes are used for such encryption mechanism. Now, I discussed about interrupts a bit. That interrupt is a type of extra or external request to the processor to serve the secondary function while leaving the main code while the processor was executing the main code at any time. So there could be priorities in interrupt. Priorities basically certain. So suppose you are studying during the exam or before the exam, and someone is asking you, your friend is asking you to go for some leisure trip. So obviously your priority will be exams. You don't want to play or go out. So that's how you set your priorities in microcontrollers as well. So there are different input-output blocks. There are different interrupt sources that could be prioritized. So through programs, that means if some low priority interrupt comes, you ignore them or keep them under waiting state. And if high priority interrupt comes, something like very medical emergencies, you have to act at that time. Same thing in microcontrollers, high priority interrupts are immediately serviced. So there are different levels of priority. So if multiple interrupt comes at a time, then you will serve the highest priority first. Then you come to the next lower device with the next lower priority task, and then you come down as you go along in 4 levels. We discussed 6 interrupt sources, 4 IO ports. Now full duplex UART, full duplex means bidirectional, okay, and full duplex means same at the same time or simultaneously there could be receiving and transmission of data. So universal asynchronous receiver transmitter UART, it can do both transmission and reception of data simultaneously, and that simultaneous operation is called full duplex. Then framing error detection. So in UART, so there could be a particular data pattern or frame. Frame in the sense how you arrange your bits. So we'll see that whether most significant bit comes first or least significant bit comes first. And also there are some start and stop bits. So those are called extra bits used for framing purpose. So that's like you have a photo and you're framing it because you want that to stay for longer duration and also it looks good. So in data framing means you add extra bits to it, to your original data, and then make sure that those extra bits help you to communicate your data safely and correctly. So it is a smaller version of encryption and decryption, you can say. So framing is a traditional version of encryption and decryption. And there are automatic address recognition. So while you're communicating, obviously you're sending a letter to another house, obviously you have to write an address. Same thing for memory, same thing for input output, same thing for basically all peripherals like keyboard, your display devices and so on. So every device must have an address, and address must be recognized either in code or through some pre-arranged arrangement in the data or pre-arranged circuits in the microcontroller. So that is automatic address recognition. Then programmable clock out. That means you can take out the clock in certain microcontrollers, and those clock frequencies can be programmed. And also some of the peripherals like UART and timers, etc., they can be fed with different clock frequencies. So your processor can run at, let's say, 16 megahertz, but your UART can run at 1 megahertz, your timer can run at 0.5 megahertz, and so on. So you can actually program your clock and then apply it. And also you can take out the clock from the chip in certain microcontrollers. So that is clock out feature, and it can be adjusted. Then asynchronous port reset, it is there in each and every microcontroller possibly in the world. This is the RST pin in the data in the pin diagram, pin number 9. So this is the reset input pin. So if you put the reset signal, that is one clock pulse over here or one logic high and then come to logic 0, then it will do asynchronous reset operation. That means at any point you can apply reset and program counter will go to 0. That means 0, 0, 0, 0, the first location in the memory map. And then low EMI. So EMI stands for electromagnetic interference. Okay, so your microcontroller should be reliable enough to withstand electromagnetic fields around its vicinity. For example, you are keeping your microcontroller inside the switchboard of your home appliances for a remote operation, for example. Now, if there is a surge, if you turn on and off your air conditioner at your house or your refrigerator, so there is a surge. So that voltage surge may not affect your device. Also, another thing, there could be magnetic surge also, not just electrical surge. So magnetic surge in the sense, if you keep your microcontroller next to a motor, directly next to a fan motor, let's say, or pump motor, for remote operation, for example. Then also the magnetic change, sudden magnetic change should not affect within a range. Obviously, it cannot be indefinite magnetic field or extremely high. So this EMI compatibility is important for space applications as well, which is a very important feature. And also there are other radiation hardening features available for certain microcontrollers. So it actually, this low AMI, that means it actually affects this ALE signal, address latch enable signal, and also slew rate controlled outputs. That means you slew rate, what is the slew rate? You must have studied in op amps. Slew rate is the maximum rate of change of voltage at the output of an operational amplifier. So, but this slew rate is also possible or applicable to any digital circuit, in fact. So in digital circuits, we call this as a rise time and fall time. So it actually came from the slew rate operation. So it is what is the maximum rate of change of voltage at the output, or while going from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. So you must have very strong drivers, that means low impedance drivers, if it is output, in order to have a large slew rate. Slew rate, basically you must have some capacitance at the output, some stray capacitance, and you are charging up the capacitor or discharging the capacitor. So the rate of charging and discharging is never zero. Okay, so there must be some finite time for charging and discharging. So that is why we get certain rise and fall duration. You can review separately rise time and fall time in digital circuits, which is actually same as slew rate. And there are different wake up and power down features, as we had discussed. So typically, the microcontroller 8051 architecture in its very simplified form is shown over here. It is slightly simplified as compared to the 89S51 because it is much more organized diagram. So this is much more basic level diagram, and whereas 89S51 was meant for advanced engineers or little design engineers in industries. So you can see here we have different blocks in this microcontroller. So there are, yes, there's a CPU is the heart. CPU means ALU and all those registers, TMP1 and TMP2 that we discussed. And CPU is bounded with interrupt control and also the oscillator. So oscillator is, this is the clock generator. So there is an external crystal. So this could be either 12 or 11.0592 that I showed yesterday in the last class in one of the PCBs that I showed, or it could be 33 megahertz or other standard crystal frequencies. And there are two capacitors here, so 30 or 33 picofarad. So there are small capacitances. So this capacitance and this crystal, and there is a little circuit which is around an inverter or NOT gate, forms a crystal oscillator. So these three are external components, whereas the oscillator is inside the IC or chip. This oscillator provides a fixed frequency clock signal that goes to the CPU, and then CPU timing and control utilizes that clock signal for all other clocks. Okay, and then timing interrupt control is there. That means there are some external interrupt and also there are some internal interrupt. So interrupt controls circuit handles all types of interrupts, looks at their priorities, and then assigns that interrupt signal or interrupt task to the CPU. Now, there are bus control signals. So this bus control basically address data and control bus control signals, which is also a part of the timing and control. Then there are different memories, RAM and ROM. So you can see ROM and RAM. So this could be flash also. Also, there are timers. So we have discussed this in traditional 51. There are two timers, and which can also be used for counter mode. That means with the external inputs. So timer could be internal register, which is doing up or down counting, whereas the counter means if you want to connect your this timer counter with for counting an external object, such as number of bogies of a railway train. So such that you can also number of products going out of your conveyor belt. So these are some examples through which you get a digital pulse for each product or each bogie that is moving out. and then this timer keeps track of it. And there are two channels for that, 0 and 1 channel. So that means you can track two different external set of digital signals in the form of clock pulses. So these are low frequency clock pulses, as unlike this high frequency internal clock. UART serial port is there. So in UART, there is TXT pin moving out data and RXT pin moving in data. And IO ports, there are 4 8-bit ports. See, look at the thickness of this bidirectional arrows. So bidirectional means bidirectional data transfer, whereas thickness, enhanced thickness, it is more traditional way of drawing multi-line signals. So each of these bidirectional arrows, arrow lines are having 8 bits. So there are total 32 lines over here. We had seen this earlier through the 89S microcontroller datasheet, that all these blocks. So I'm sure that you must have reviewed this, because this diagram is very important. So if I ask you to draw in the exam, draw the architecture of 8051, then I will prefer to see this kind of diagram. Okay, so because this is much more in depth, and this is much more, I will say, much more detailed diagram where more understanding is necessary. And we spent some time over here. So the core family of chips in 8051 was originally, these 3 chips were available in early 80s, and that's where actually I'm coming from. Because why we're reviewing such old day chips? Because there are certain basic things which were very well explained over there in those data sheets or documentation. Obviously, modern data sheets are equally good and even better, I'll say. But there is no harm in looking at the history part of it very quickly. This is just an overview of the summary of the features of the families of microcontrollers which were available. So 8031 doesn't have any ROM chip, as you can see, but it has all other features like RAM, timers, IO port, serial port, and interrupt sources. Okay, so I'll just skip this. Now, more interestingly, we are now coming closer to programming. So next week, possibly we'll do lots of programming of this microcontroller, but programming requires internal hardware understanding. Basically, you should understand how the hardware is arranged and how it works. So that's important to the extent possible. So in 8051, there are lots of registers, and typically there are 4 banks of 8-bit registers. That means 4 into 8 registers are there, and that means 4 banks. So 4 banks means there are 4 groups of 8-bit registers, and those groups are named separately. But look at this 8-bit register. So R0 to R7. That means in each of those banks there are 8 registers having the same name, R0 to R7 in bank 0, then R0 to another R0 to R7 in bank 1, and so on. So there are 4 banks of 8-bit registers, and this comes within the RAM addressing space. So they have given the space like 00 RAM address to 07H. Now look at this. Number of hex digits here are just 2. That means this address is also 8-bit. So this address is not 16-bit. So if you're going off chip or if you're going to ROM area, typically we go for 16-bit addressing. But if we are in 8051, traditionally, if you look at internal registers or internal RAM, then we only talk about 8-bit address, 8 digital bits. So that means 2 digits of hex. So each of these are 4 bits. Okay. Then there are special function registers, SFR. I said that accumulated with the datasheet. Look at this ACC, A register and B register. We discussed about these 2 registers. So A register is basically 8-bit register, which is also called as ACC or accumulator. B register is another 8-bit register. And then this A and B are commonly used, or rather used for multiplication and division, apart from other operations also. But these are some of the applications, this multiplication and division operations between A and B. We discussed about dual data pointers, and I said data pointer is 16-bit register inside the microcontroller that points to the RAM area, somewhere in the RAM space. Okay, so up to 64 kilobytes memory addressing capacity exists because data pointer is 16 bits. And 8051 by default is an 8-bit processor or microcontroller. So 8-bit microcontroller data bus is 8 bits. So the designers in Intel thought that why not we split the data pointer into two 8-bit registers, data pointer high DPH and data pointer low DPL. Each of them are 8 bits, and if you merge them together, DPH and DPL, then it becomes 16 bits together. So that's how data pointer registers are basically organized inside the microcontroller. So whenever you see data pointer, there must be two registers. So dual data pointer means there are two 16-bit registers separately can be utilized. Then a stack pointer. So SP is a stack pointer. So stack pointer is another register, is a special function register, which again points to some area in the RAM space, or in the standard RAM area inside the microcontroller, where you store certain recovery data. It's like system restore. We have some options for system restore in Windows and other operating systems. So those system restore means what? It in case of any problem with our main C drive or any other memories, main memory, then we can go back to the original settings of your computer. So system restore is actually much more advanced version of the stack, you can say. So stack is a primitive and original concept that came up, where you restore certain information such that you can regain operation from the original location if necessary. So this is basically stack pointer is utilized optionally while you need some restoring point or restoration. So it is nothing but it points to some memory location, and typically RAM location because of 8 bits. And in certain microcontrollers, you will find stack pointer is 16 bits. Even 32-bit stack pointers are also available in ARM processors. But stack pointer is so popular, like program counter and stack pointer and typical registers concept. These are there in all microcontrollers. So we'll see stack pointer with interrupt service routine and other programming strategies, where we'll utilize stack pointer very often. Now, for the ports, all those 32-bit lines for the input-output ports, port 0 to port 3, each of them are 8 bits. So there are different registers. So those registers are also considered something similar to RAM. So there is no difference as such writing to the internal RAM location as compared to writing into the port lines or data pointer lines and so on. So through programming, again, those points or those concepts will be much more clearer. For timers and counters, there are other special function registers, that is timer mode select, timer control TCON and TMOD, and then timer high, timer low for 0 channel and 1 channel. Timer high 1, timer low 1, timer high 0, timer low 0. So these 6 registers are particularly used for timers, and also you'll see there are some alternate other functions also as we see the format of these registers. So all these registers like TMOD, TCON, TH, TL are all 8 bits wide registers, similar to DPL, DPH, accumulator, and bits. So they in size, so all of these are 8-bit registers. But some of them can be merged, like DPH, DPL and TH and TL, so they can be merged. But you cannot merge TMOD and TCON, SP and IO ports. So those things are not allowed. But certain registers can be merged to make them 16 bits. And certain other registers, you have to use them separately. Now, TH and TL are the count value register, or basically it holds the values for counting or timer operation for the on-chip timing applications. So, memory organization, we have seen the memory address range. However, in every microcontroller, there must be some customized way of organizing memory. That means there are some, you have to remember the ways how the original designers of the microcontroller thought about utilizing the memory space. Obviously, you can innovate in its application side, but in terms of architecture, it is pretty fixed. So you can say that's a drawback in microcontrollers, that your architecture is pretty much fixed, and that's why people are coming with programmable system on chip these days. There are even modern microcontrollers with programmable architecture, so you can plug and play some architectures. So that's outside our syllabus. I can discuss that a bit. You'll find something from Cypress PSOC, which is having a microcontroller along with some blocks which you can connect. You can determine, so something like this, you can determine this kind of block diagram based on a library of blocks. So they give you library of ROM, RAM, and basically, or fixed ROM and RAM, maybe library of IO ports and so on. So you can plug and play like FPGA. So FPGA is again different, I'll say. FPGA means you have only gates and then arrange the gates to realize all these blocks. So you can, by FPGA, you can realize a microcontroller, but it will be power hungry. So by using simple FPGA, if you construct any microcontroller by through programming, it will be really power hungry. So that's why these microcontrollers are still very popular, because of the optimized performance, okay, of the architecture. So in memory, although we cannot do much about the architecture in 8051, even in ARM also architecture is fixed, but very efficient. This memory organization should be understood in terms of theory while before writing any code by using this microcontroller. So in 8051, people have considered a separate memory space for program and data. Okay, now program memory is definitely could be flash or ROM. Data memory could be RAM or internal registers sometimes. But you have two different ways. Program memory is addressed by program counter, and data memory is addressed by data pointer in general, but also stack pointer and other registers in certain special conditions. Okay, now the memory could be part of it inside and part of it could be outside. Look at this, the program memory, although 4 kilobytes on chip memory is present in 8051 or 89S51, but the provision is up to 64 kilobyte, right? Program counter is 16 bits. So 64 kilobytes, 65,536 locations. So this 64 kilobyte memory must be residing, if you deduct 4 kilobyte, that is 60 kilobyte out of 64 kilobyte memory, program memory. So the 60 kilobytes should stay outside your physical chip, something like the other diagram that I showed. Let's go quickly. In this example, so I had shown you earlier, we discussed earlier that the microcontroller was here, U1, whereas U2 is a RAM chip, 6264. So RAM chip, this RAM chip is utilized, placed outside the microcontroller. So that means it is an additional RAM chip that is used in addition to 128 bytes of RAM inside the microcontroller. Okay, so this RAM chip, in this case it was 2 kilobytes, but it can go up to 60 kilobyte. Obviously you have to use more address lines here. Up to 812 has been used, but here you have provision up to A15. So if you consider up to A15, obviously you can address up to 60 kilobytes of external RAM location. Similarly, this is a RAM, so this is not a program memory. So this could be a data memory only. But there could be another chip which is not used over here, but there could be another memory chip which could be a flash memory or EEPROM memory or EEPROM memory, which can be used for storing program. And that we'll call it as an external program memory. For external program memory, so there is a line called external access bar. If you look at this EA bar is not utilized in this diagram because there is no external program memory as such. Okay, and data memory can be read only by read and write bar signals. So that's what is given. Write bar and read bar, these are coming out of the microcontroller, going inside the RAM chip, external RAM chip. So if you use another program memory, you have to use EA bar in addition, and also you take tabs, something like this. You just take tabs from read and write, and then use that along with the external program memory. So typically write bar is not so popular with external memory if it is 8051 series microcontroller, but you need definitely a read bar, because while executing program you have to again and again read. Obviously you have to write at some point, but that is not done during program execution. So what we get to see that we have an external memory, let's say 1000 to FFFF. So this is the other way around. So highest memory address location at the upper side they are written. That's fine. It's one and the same. So in that case, you start from 1000 and then go up. And these numbers are all in hexadecimal number system. Now, if you keep EA bar equal to 1, so you can control that externally. So that means you should have some mechanism to assign this control. So if you have EA bar equal to 1, that means internal memory will be utilized. That means program will be executed from 4 kilobyte on chip flash. But if you keep EA bar, external access bar, now you are activating this EA bar equal to 0. In that case, you have to basically go to the external memory space. Okay, so that is how you can program. So EA bar equal to 1, access internal memory, that is whatever location or range that the microcontroller size. If it is 4 KB, the size will be 0000 to FFF. Okay, and then if it is any other 8 kilobytes and so on, you can convert that number into hexadecimal. So then the upper digit will change. Okay, this upper digit will change for internal range, and for external range, obviously the higher address beyond that limit. So whatever is that limit, beyond that limit, you can use it for addressing the higher or external memory locations, while EA bar is 0. Now, this data memory is again, you have to understand a little deep into it. So data memory, as I said, it could be internal RAM or it could be external memory also, like this external RAM. So here in this memory organization first slide, we are talking about program memory. Okay, so for program memory, this EA bar is required, but in addition, read bar is also required. Okay, so which is not written over here. We'll see from the timing diagram those details. But for a data memory, you have to basically make sure that again those two options are there, either internal RAM, whatever number of bytes, 128 or so, and then external provision through the data pointer is available for accessing the entered space. So that means for data memory, you can again have this entered area from 00000 to FFFF or entire memory range. But given, you have to make sure that this location, whatever your data pointer is pointing to, should not directly overlap. If it is overlapping, then you have to take extra precaution. Okay, in hardware, you have to make sure that your data pointer is not pointing to anywhere in the program memory space. So that is a word of caution. Technically, there is no limitation. You can still read something from the program memory space, but you have to make sure that data should not get or do any wrong operation after you read from the program memory space. Although program memory is controlled by program counter, but data memory through DPTR can also read something from program memory. So that kind of overlap is also allowed, but you have to use that carefully. But that is useful also sometimes. Suppose you want to store a table, some lookup table in the ROM memory, flash memory. So while reading that lookup table, you need a data pointer. So that's why this provision is given. So for certain applications, you are pre-storing certain data, like what is the name of your device. You are making a product and you are assigning a unique identifier or unique model number. So those things must be read by the data pointer by using data pointer, because those information like attributes should be permanent in nature, so it should be stored in non-volatile memory. But while operation, you can read it as data. Okay, so there could be up to 64 kilobyte external data memory. Now look at this. Some part of data memory could be internal RAM. Some part of this could be special function registers like those TCON, TMOD, and other registers that we'll discuss. And some other part of the data could be external data memory anywhere between this range. So data memory may be addressed by using 8-bit addresses like 2-digit hex addresses, or if you are using data pointer, then this could be 16-bit address for accessing external data memory. So this is, you have to remember certain rules before programming the microcontroller. Okay. Now RAM allocation in 8051. So that means RAM allocation means this address range allocation for 8051. Okay, so look at this range. So register bank, I said there are 4 register banks. So bank 0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so there are 4 banks. Each of them are having 8 bytes. That means 8-bit location into 8 locations. So bank 0 has R0 to R7. Bank 1 has another R0 to R7. Bank 2 will have another third group of R0 to R7. Bank 3 will have fourth group of R0 to R7. So all of these are 8 locations of 8-bit addressing. Now look at this. Something in bracket is written for bank 1, which is stack. So you can use the stack pointer to point anywhere between the 08 and 0f, but that's not necessary. This is suggested but not necessary. You can use your stack for other locations beyond this address from 08 to 0f. You can do it with bank 0 also, bank 3 also. And also even anywhere in the RAM area. Now after these 4 register banks are over, then there are 2 types of simple RAM memories, or rather 2 types of simple RAM areas or locations. First is a bit addressable RAM. Bit addressable basically means all those 8 bits. So each of those locations, let's say I consider 20 hex address location. For that location, so there are 8 bits over here. So those 8 bits can be addressed separately. You can set or reset any 1 bit at a time without affecting adjacent bits. Whereas that facility is not available in registers, that facility is not available in Scratchpad, and the normal Scratchpad RAM. Scratchpad RAM means every location must be addressed all 8 bits together. So you cannot do any change in D7 location while retaining the other locations. Here you have to consider all 8 locations simultaneously. It's like a group operation is compulsory. Whereas bit addressable means a bit level, that means 1 bit at a time can be addressed anywhere within this space, within this addresses. So that is possible because instructions are designed in such a way that this bit addressable is allowed in this region of addresses and not allowed elsewhere. Now 128 bytes RAM. So 10 standard 8051. So 128 bytes means FF hex. So FF hex is the last memory location in if it is 128 bytes of RAM. If the RAM is 256 bytes like 89S52, then it will be FF instead of 7F. So this is instead of 128, that will be 255. Actually, if 7F means 127, and if it is FF for 256 bytes, it will be 255. But total locations is 256 or 128. So this is 0th location. This is 127th location. If it is 8051, if it is 52, this will be 256th location or FF, which is equivalent to 255. Okay. Any question up to this point? Do you have any question?
Sir, could you specify the difference?
Sorry.
Sir, could you specify the difference between a clock and a timer?
Okay. Yeah, just a moment. Very relevant question. Clock and a timer, the differences. Okay. A clock signal is a signal. Let's go to the timing diagram once. Okay. A clock signal is a fundamental or basic driving signal inside a microcontroller. Where is that? Yeah. So clock is nothing but a free running square wave signal or rectangular wave signal. So clock is something like a information fuel, you can say. That means it is the driving signals. With every clock, there must be some operation which has been assigned by other conditions, like other signals and other program and etc. So clock is an independent oscillating square wave signal which goes on and on and on, and which every clock cycle or every group of clock cycles, there must be certain operations being done. So the clock is very basic. That means it is common to any microcontroller. But if you look at the timer, so timer is something like one of these peripherals. Okay, one of these peripherals which can be accessed through address, data, and control buses. So timer. Now looking at the specialized version of the timer. So timer 0 and 1, as I said. So there are two timers. So consider any one of them. So timer requires, let's say I don't have any external input, so I just disable this external inputs here, and I want to count the time elapsed. So how do I count a time elapsed? I have an oscillator generating a clock signal, let's say 1 megahertz signal. I'm taking simple example, 1 megahertz, some slow example. So that 1 megahertz signal is generated by using this oscillator. So I should use a 1 megahertz crystal oscillator, then this capacitor and this external circuit, internal circuit, and then CPU will get 1 megahertz clock signal. Now I want, let's say, whether I have elapsed 1 second or not. So how do I know whether the microcontroller has elapsed 1 second after I turn on? This is a very simplified and generic example. This is not an exact example. That's how we should do coding. But this is a generic example. I've started a microcontroller with 1 megahertz clock. CPU is getting 1 megahertz. Now, the timing and control of the CPU also channelizes through code 1 megahertz signal to this timer 0. So there is no upscaling or downscaling of frequency. Just as it is 1 kilohertz, 1 megahertz is transferred to this timer 0. Now, timer 0 is having some sort of counter, digital counter. So what it will do, assume it is a up counter. Assume it's not always up counter. Again, in programming you will see different up and down, both are possible. But assume the timer is having some sort of digital counter inside this block, and that digital counter is getting a clock signal of 1 megahertz through the CPU. So what it will do, after one clock cycle, it will increment by one number. After another second clock cycle, it will increment by another number. It's an up counter, right? After 1 million clock cycle, assume you have enough number of bits, enough width, or it's not 8 or 16, it is wider than that. Okay, much wider than that. So it can at least hold 1 million times count. So whatever number of bits, 20 bits will be required possibly. Okay, so this up counter kept on counting with every clock cycle or every microsecond. The up counter is incrementing by 1. So after 1 million clock cycles, let's say the CPU comes and read the value from that counter or the timer register. So what we'll see, it will find 1 million. So it may be in hexadecimal number, but it could be 1 million, or it could be in binary, simple binary, obviously. Then the CPU again, okay, it has done the reading and it will do something else. Then after, let's say, few more clock cycles, let's say another 500,000 clock cycles, it will again read. So what will find 1.5 million count. Now after some time, this is having a fixed width, it will going to overflow. That means if I am having 20 bits or 16 bits, after certain number of count, it will overflow. That means it will become to 0 because counter will roll back. So the counter rolling back will happen. So before the rolling back happens, the CPU should make an intelligent judgment and then reset the counter and ask it to start from 0. That means it will reset it and then it will again start. So the clock signal is fundamental to any microcontroller system or microcomputer system, which directly goes to the CPU and indirectly goes to each and every block in the chip. Whereas a timer is a peripheral which takes clock as an input and starts counting how many clocks it received. So that's a very basic way to understand the difference between timer and a simple clock. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Any other question? Okay, so we'll continue our discussion. Yeah, question?
Yes, sir. So you told that there shouldn't be any conflict while we are accessing external data memory and program memory.
Yeah.
Sir, but there are certain control pins that works only during programming, means reading from program memory, and there are some control pins that work only when accessing external data memory, right? So there shouldn't be any conflict.
See, the conflict is possible if you do that wrongly in the code while controlling that extra signals. So your point is right. If you can manage those pins properly through your code by issuing proper instructions, then only that safeguarding is possible. Okay, so like program store enable, so and EA bar. So these are the two basically signals which control whether you are accessing the data memory and the program memory. So let's go to the pin diagram. Okay, so you have for segregating data and program. So these lines are important: program store enable and EA bar. So program store enable basically and EA bar can be controlled separately, or basically you have to basically make sure that these signals are properly utilized. And when you want to utilize, by using either external signals, or like EA bar comes from external signals. So EA bar is input to the microcontroller and PSEN is output. Okay, so if you consider EA bar, if configure EA bar externally, suppose you forget to configure, or your program or external device forgets to or does a wrong configuration of EA bar, then you can actually get overlapped data and program. So that is my concern. So in addition, the instructions which are executed, some instructions are automatically configuring PSEN and bar, and some instruction doesn't control ascend bar. Okay, so you have to make sure the right type of instruction, like moving operation. So moving data from one place to another, like inside the microcontroller to outside the microcontroller, or vice versa, can be done by using several instructions. There are, I think, 4 or 5 move instructions in 8051, and some of them are meant for program or data, and some of them are meant for just basically like a lookup table kind. So it's a chunk of data it can bring in. So different choice of right instructions and choice or correct signals from external world. So signal which is coming from external world doesn't have direct control through the code. So you have to make sure both of them. So this is a word of caution. That's why I say. But there are distinct boundaries through which, or distinct rules. If you follow them very strictly, there is no question of overlap of program and data. Is that, are you convinced?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. We'll go to our next slide, which is register banks and RAM address. Oh, sorry. This register banks, as I said, there are 4 banks. Each of them are having 8 registers. Each register is 8 bits wide. So there are 8-bit registers inside a bank, and there are 4 such banks. So that means 8 into 4 registers are present inside 8051, which are inside the banks, register banks. Now look at the names. ART0 is present in bank 0 and also present in other 3 banks. Same for all other arts up until ART7. So you have to make sure that you select a proper bank before addressing ART7 or ART6 and so on. So the name of the registers are same in all those banks if the locations are same. But obviously the addresses are different based on the bank numbers. Like ART0 in bank 0 locates at 00 hex address, whereas ART0 at bank 1 is 08 hex. And you can see for other 2 ART0s, 10 and 18. So 10 and 18 are not in decimal, these are all in hexadecimal. 10 hex. So I will not call it 10 hex, I'll call it 10 hex. Okay, so that is important. You have to preferably write the number system after this. So 0h or 0x00. So there are 2 ways of writing the hexadecimal numbers. So the hexadecimal addressing is given over here. Obviously, these are all binary. You can directly convert to binary. Now, these SFRs are very important. Special function registers. So SFRs are the part of RAM locations, as you have seen earlier. So address range of the RAM location is 80 to FFH, and SFRs are there for each and every peripherals. So special function registers. What are special functions? What is so special? Because they configure certain operations of the microcontroller, such as serial port, such as timer or counter, such as other ports like interrupt, and such functions are there. If you look at the SFRs, so those special functions, that means each function, like UART is a special function, it's an input output function. Why it is called special? Because it is outside the microprocessor part, but it is within the microcontroller, outside the microprocessor. That's why they are calling it a special function. So serial UART registers are there, like SCON, serial control register, serial buff, SBUF, serial buffer register for transmit, serial buffer for receive. So there are 3 special function registers or SFRs for serial port UART. Now timers are having different. You have seen those 6 registers: TCON, TMOD, TH, and TL ones and zeros over here. Interrupt control registers. Through interrupt control, i.e. now it is very powerful register actually. Interrupt control and interrupt priority registers, or interrupt enable and interrupt priority registers. So these 2 registers typically control the internal hardware or external hardware or internal software interrupts. They manage basically interrupt. They can actually, you can enable and disable the interrupts through this IE registers, and you can set the priority within rules, obviously, we'll see that those rules through this IP registers. So these are all 8-bit registers. Whatever names you're seeing, SCON is 8-bit, SBUF is 8-bit, and so on. IE is 8-bit and IP is 8-bit. Then we talked about PSW register, which is next to the CPU or the ALU of the CPU, which is called Program Status Word Register, PSW register. Where is that PSW register? We can see here, PSW register is next to the ALU. So PSW is a flag registers, and you can see SFRs, timers are all present. Okay, so inside this microcontroller, so you'll find all these special function registers. Now, PSW is also known as flag register. Flag register means if you do certain operation by using the ALU, arithmetic and logic unit, you will find that answer is either 0 or non-zero. Parity, number of zeros and number of ones are counted automatically. So those things are some extra status that could be updated or that are actually updated in PSW register or program status word registers. Now this PSW register and all these registers that we have seen are having certain addresses. See, in microcontroller is a digital circuit, and digital circuit always goes by logic, certain logic behind. And here the logic is that every register, every memory location, whether it is RAM or ROM, every special function register are all having some unique address. So that is the logic behind the organization or this block diagram that we had studied. So every block in the microcontroller, or rather most of the blocks inside the microcontroller, must have its own unique address, whether it is 8-bit or 16-bit or 4-bit or any other bits. So uniquely addressable locations are present. So they are all physically spread out with certain identifiers, and those identifiers are given over here in the form of addresses. Look at this SFR organization. So now this is the kind of little block diagram or little table within the microcontroller 8051, having showing different registers and their addresses. So whenever I talk about B register, so B means in the program, the B register, actually in the program we write A or B or PSW, IP. So these are all human given names to the registers having certain functions. But these human names, or basically friendly names, are not really existent. Yeah, inside the microcontroller, what exists is basically some addresses for those locations, for those registers. Like B is represented by F0. So whenever you write a code, let's say move something from A to B, so all A comma B, let's say if you write, so all those things are, or rather move B to A or any other B to anywhere else, or anywhere to anywhere else within this register set or special function register that are available, we are actually writing move this address location data in this address to data to another address. So that means move whatever inside this B register, or B register is actually represented by F0, and move whatever is inside this F0 to whatever is there in E0. So that means move B to A. Okay, and I'll write such instruction as move A comma B, because destination first, source later. We'll see the instruction format in further detail while I'll clarify this. I want to move, let's say, something from F0, which is inside F0. F0 is the address of this 8 bits, and that those 8 bits are transferred to somewhere which is addressed as E0. So I'll write move destination A, which is destination, comma B. Okay, So that means it will take F0, copy whatever is there inside F0, and then put it in E0. And likewise, we can do for any other combination of registers here. So you can see the names that we have seen in the block diagram. So SFRs and all those A, B, PSW are having all unique address like interrupt priority register, those port registers, even P3, P2, P1, P0. So what are these port registers? If you look at the diagram, then look at this port 0 latch, port 2 latch, port 1 latch, port 3 latch. So these latches are actually registers. These are special function registers. Like port 2 latch is basically means A0. So the port 2 latch in that block diagram represents A0. Port 3 latch represents B0 address. So we are going deeper into the problem. So every block, almost every block in that block diagram has its own unique address. And those things are also possible with DPL, DPH, timers. And then this one we haven't discussed so far, which is PCON register, power control. So this is a multifunction register. That's why they kept it separately. Okay. And now the grade ones are reserved registers. So you can see that only some of the registers are utilized. So there are 256 basically boxes here, and out of 256 only the ones in white background are utilized and others are not utilized. See, I've actually covered something over here in the C8 location. Why I've done this? Because these are there in 8052 microcontrollers. I don't want to get yourself deeper into 8052. You can obviously understand 8051 and easily add some more extra blocks over here. So that's not a big deal. But the big deal is basically you have to understand the basics, how actually we are approaching, how people have designed these microcontrollers. What's the motivation and logic behind this kind of microcontroller design? Now you can see there could be up to 256 location, that is FF location, for this internal registers, SFR space. But why many of them, most of them are great? Because these are used for future expansion. If you take any recently released microcontroller, you will find many of them are actually occupied, even all of them might be occupied. Yeah, someone is asking question.
Yes, sir. Since you were talking about we are understanding as to why the architecture and all, so could you please explain why why are they named same, the 4 banks R0? Why not just name from 0 to 32?
Okay. So this question basically, so they, whatever you're saying is present in ARM, like microcontroller or other modern architectures.
Exactly, right.
Where they have named uniquely for those registers. But earlier, actually, people might have thought, although this reason, the exact answer is not known to me, but you can think from the designer's perspective. Okay, so initially they might have coming up with 8 registers, general purpose register R0 to R7, and then they replicated that or they instantiated that multiple times, like 4 times for banks R0 to R7. So essentially, whatever might be the name, it doesn't matter, because as I said, the actual address matters. And for R0 to R7, you can see in bank 0 it is 00 to 07, whereas the same name but different locations are there in bank 1. Essentially,
Right,
it doesn't
I get it.
matter.
So essentially, there's no preference over 0, 1, 2, or 3 in instruction sets, right? Like, for example, you can have special instructions for some register to some register.
Yes. So basically, for the ease of programming, possibly another reason. So the second reason why they have named it same for all 4 banks, there are 4 R0s and so on, because in programming there are certain general purpose instructions in 8051. You will see that through certain bits in the SFRs, special function registers, in you can select the banks. Let's say you select bank 1, and then you write your code with, let's say, R0 to R7. All the instructions that comes after configuring bank 1 will be actually considered over here. Whereas if you want to change to, let's say, bank 3 later on, you must have been doing that through another instruction in between, that you change now bank 1 to bank 3 through configuration in the code through SFRs, and then again you write R0 to R7 through your instructions. It will now operate between 1.8 to 1F instead of 0.8 to 0F. Okay, so so one reason could be to simplify the coding, whereas you have to make sure the programmer, the original programmer writing the code for the Flash, must take that into consideration. But later on, people thought that okay, so there are a lot of other complexities to handle. So just handling some banks and little set of register is not a very big deal. So that's why in ARM-like processors, they have come up with very unique names for all those registers instead of repeated names for the similar work but different registers. Okay, so are you getting my point? So I gave you two reasons. So obviously these are the two possible reasons. So there is no answer that I have seen to this question so far, but it's a very valid question.
Because I mean, if you're changing your banks with one more instruction, you're kind of wasting one more cycle, right? When you
Exactly.
could directly address it right away because the all are
Exactly.
unique. So, okay.
Exactly. So people evolve with ideas, right? So all this technology that we get to see haven't come in one day or just a few years. It came over centuries. So people come up with newer ideas, newer solutions, better ways to implement the same problem or complicated problems. So it's an evolution process. So 8051 is a much more older microcontroller. So that's why there were lots of bottlenecks. So first of all, RISC versus CISC, you can understand why people haven't come with RISC first. Because they understood that CISC has certain drawbacks, and that's why they wanted to solve it. Then they came up with RISC architectures. So same thing over here, that this naming process was not very efficient. Coding was not very efficient at that time, but still this was the state of the art way back in the future, in the past. Okay, so this registers, now our task will be to look at each of those registers in detail, and then we'll dive to programming and the instruction set. Actually, instruction set will come first and then programming. Okay, so we have to understand each and every part. So look at this. Some of these are bit addressable. Bit addressable means all 8 bits can be addressed one by one by related instructions. Whereas you can look at some other registers like tmod, sp, and so on. So these are not bit addressable. These are all byte addressable. That means 8 bits at a time should be addressed simultaneously. So for all the ports, you can change 1 bit at a time. For this interrupts and program status word and so on, accumulator B. So these registers are bit addressable. So now bit addressable has certain advantages where you can just change 1 bit, such as I want to turn on one LED connected to P2, whereas the other 7 LEDs may be off, assuming 8 LEDs are connected to P2, then I can actually just come to any one of the bits and turn on and off that LED at a time. So that's the advantage. But for that to happen, there are instructions. So whatever bit addressable instructions are available, they are compatible to all these registers, whereas byte addressable registers are compatible to others. But look at this, byte addressable registers are also applicable to all these bit addressable registers. So that means bit as well as byte addressable, I'll call it. Okay, through programming, you will get the proof what I'm saying. So accumulator A or ACC is one of the most important registers or special function registers. So the mnemonics mnemonic for accumulator specific instruction is always written as A. What is a mnemonic? Mnemonic is a short form for representing a block or a register or some memory location. Mnemonic is nothing but a nickname, you can say. So you must have some nickname at home. So those nicknames are in digital electronics are called as mnemonics. So actually this mnemonics or whatever accumulator or B, whatever you call it, there is the address. That is the most important thing. But remembering those addresses is tedious. And that's why names are given. So remembering names are easier. So that's the reason why still today modern microcontrollers give names to the registers or other blocks, but there are addresses in the background. So B register is another important register which is used typically for various operations, including multiply and divide. And it basically all these SFRs can also be used as scratchpad register. So what is a scratchpad register? Scratchpad is nothing but a RAM register, a RAM-like operation. What is a scratchpad in reality? So you have a rough notebook. So let's say you have a rough page at the end of your answer script or at the end of your notebook, just to do some scribbling work, just to write something, plan something, cut it, and then change it. So that is scratchpad. You are scratching, you're conceiving some idea, putting it over there, and changing that over. So that is scratching up and then updating that. So RAM is like that. RAM is a scratchpad memory because random access memory can be written and read any number of times virtually. So you can there is no endurance associated with RAM, and same thing is there for accumulator and register. Actually, what are these A and B registers and all these registers? These are some sort of D flip-flop arrays. Accumulator is a 8-bit D flip-flop with bidirectional ability, bidirectional D flip-flop that I explained to you sometime back about the port pins. So same thing for accumulator also. So you can write over there, you update the D flip-flop and then read back the output of the D flip-flop through a switch. Let's say you have a single D flip-flop and you arrange 8 of them in parallel, separate ones, tie all the clocks together, keep data pins separate, all the D0 to D7 separate, and Q0 to Q7, which are the output pins, also separate. Now, you can actually put data into D and apply the clock to all of them simultaneously to store data, or you just read all the Q signals through some switches, and then you can reading the output of the 8-bit register. So that's how accumulator is designed, and same thing is done for B and all other registers. Only thing is that there are some connection differences which makes its function to be different, but all of them are 8-bit D flip-flop arrays, you can think of it. So these are called latches also, because flip-flops are also called as latches because they hold the data unless you change it or unless you interrupt the power or disrupt the power. So B register and A register are two 8-bit registers which are very commonly used. A is the most commonly used register. You'll find in several instructions A is super common or very popular register. B is also common but not always to that extent. Stack pointer, we discussed, it's a 8-bit register. It is incremented before data is stored during push and call. So now push and call, these are the instructions which is coming from instruction set. And these instructions have certain syntax and operations. Again, different types of call are present, different types of push are present. So we'll look at it through instruction set. It will be much clearer. We'll come back to what is stack. But for now, you can think of it, this is an 8-bit version of a data pointer, but it works in a slightly different way that you will see that it actually stores data, but it's actually the data stored is not simple data. There is a special kind of data called as address or called return address. We'll see that through the stack. So after initialization, that means if you reset the chip, this register is auto-initialized or automatically configured at 07H. And that is the reason why this stack is written over here. After reset, so this basically stack pointer actually goes to 0.07, but the point is the stack pointer stores data in the upper side. Okay, so that is why 08 is the first location for the stack memories, and that is why stack is written as register bank 1. But it is not necessary that stack should be always associated with 1. It can be associated with any other banks. It can be associated with anywhere elsewhere also within the RAM. But only condition, stack should be anywhere within the scratchpad area, which is the registers and the RAM. But after reset, automatically it goes to 07, but you can change this value. So data pointer is a 16-bit register, which is the address register, which points to data, and it is basically a combination of DPH and DPL together. You can write to them separately. You can also read to them from them separately, DPH and DPL, but typical operation scenario uses both of them merged together. DPH, that means the most significant 8 bits, and DPL, least significant 8 bits. That means data pointer 15 to data pointer 8 is in DPH, and data pointer 7 to data pointer 0 is in DPL. Ports 0 to 3 are again, SFRs, we have discussed about this quite a lot. Serial data buffer. Serial data buffer is SBUF for TX and RX that you had seen. So this data buffer is nothing but a temporary warehouse, you can say. It's a storing room. It's a storeroom that is used to interface with the serial communication. So SBUF is just a temporary storage location for 8-bit data, and then once you store the 8-bit data, it will either move out or it will come in from the external world. Okay, so again, further details as we go with programming and timing diagrams. Timer registers, again, you can merge them together, TH0 and TL0 together, TH1 and TL1 together, but you cannot merge TH0 with TL1. That is not allowed. Okay, so only same within the same category, 0 category or 1 category, you have to merge them. So these are individually 8 bits, but maybe merge to make it 16-bit. Now for 8052, there were 2 registers more, TH2 and TL2, and that's why current timer counters up to 2 was there. So traditionally 0 and 1 are only present. Control registers, IP, IE, all those registers are present. So these control registers are basically controlling certain configurations, and basically how the microcontroller is going to behave with interrupts. So you have to control them, right? So how do you control them? By writing something into the interrupt registers, or by writing something into the timer registers, or writing into the power or serial communication registers, or serial configuration registers. Now comes the most important part. You have to memorize this kind of things. So, and the best way to memorize is by practice. So you may think that I'm asking you to mug up some data, but actually, if you do that by your own repeatedly, you won't find that to be very tedious. Personally, I feel really bad and very loading if I'm required to memorize a lot of things just without understanding. So you should always make sure that your understanding is strong, and then you start to feel that it is not actually mugging up, it is basically logically progressing how it is done. And then apply through your codes and practice through writing. You'll automatically start feeling confident and comfortable. So as I said, you have to memorize. Even I don't personally memorize these things. I used to memorize this while I was a student, but now I go by logic. To be very frank, I only go by logic, and that is the best way, and that's the professional way. In industries, you will be asked to go by proper method instead of just you can always refer back to these data sheets again and again. But for exams, obviously, in this online exam, you will always have this reference. But earlier in offline exam, people used to memorize it by heart. That was a requirement. So let's start with PSW. So program status word, as I read, it is is a flag register, and 8085, which is another older microprocessor, not a microcontroller. 8085 is another 8-bit microprocessor which came even before 8051, and PSW has been renamed from the original flag register in 8085. So PSW, as I said, it's a bit addressable register. That means all bits are together, are separately addressable. And you can see those 8-bit configuration at the top, MS bit that is on the left and LS bit on the right. So now MS bit, most significant bit and least significant bit. So look at the names of those bits, and the second last from LS bit is having dash. That means there is nothing over there. It's just empty. Even if you write something, it may not be able to store. That means only 8, instead of 8 D flip-flops, there are only 7 D flip-flops here. So that's the meaning of that dash. But let's look at other important bits which are present. So CY is the carry flag, which is 7th bit, PSW.7. AC is the auxiliary carry. We will see that what is auxiliary carry flag. So carry is generated during addition, or even borrow is generated during subtraction. So that kind of carry or borrow is stored in CY flag if it is beyond 8 bits. Okay, 9th bit carry or the borrow that gets generated 9th bit in subtraction, that gets stored in carry flag. So there is not a, it's actually carry / subtract flag or borrow flag, you can say. Carry / borrow flag, but main is actually carry. Auxiliary carry is same thing, but it is used to store the carry or borrow from the 5th location or 8 within the 8-bit operation. So it is basically only used for certain BCD operations only. Basically, it is updated, but it's not always used all the time, because your processor is 8 bits, so you should only consider the 9th bit if there is a carry or not. But in certain operation like BCD operations, we consider the 5th bit after 4th bit. Basically, if there is a carry or if there is a borrow, then that value is updated in AC bit, which is 6th bit in PSW. Then F0 is basically flag 0 available for general purpose. So that means that user can assign any function and or store some temporary status in this flag. So this is basically available, but not related to any one of the results that the ALU is doing. So that means ALU and PSW are close by, and ALU never updates this F0 flag. If you want to update it, use it in your code separately in software. Now, those register banks, RS1 and RS0. So this is the bank select registers. These are the bank select registers. So register bank select zeros and ones. So if you put it 0 and 0, RS1 equal to 0, RS0 equal to 0, then bank 0 will be selected. If you keep 0 and 1, then bank 1 will be selected. If you keep 1 and 0, bank 2 will be selected. If you keep 1 and 1 for both RS1 and RS0, then bank 3 will be selected. Now, whatever after selecting through RS1 and RS0, you will only talk to R0 to R7. So then R0 to R7, the address range gets determined by the configuration of these 2 bits together. So if you have to consider these 2 bits as a single number, either 00 or 01 or 10 or 1. Based on that, this are bank 0 to bank 3 will be, any one of them will be selected. Now, there in certain cases there is an overflow. It is slightly different than auxiliary carry. We'll see through program how the overflow happens. So this overflow flag basically shows that whether your result is actually going out of range or so. So that is actually indicated in overflow, and it is only associated with certain instructions. We'll see with instruction set while we'll study that in very soon next. Then parity flag, I mentioned about parity as even or odd, that means counting number of zeros and ones. So those kind of counting in after the result comes from arithmetic logic unit gets updated. That means the results is analyzed, all the result, 8-bit result that comes out of ALU gets analyzed, and then the processor automatically counts the even or odd parity and then updates this particular bit. So it is set or cleared. That set means 1, cleared means 0 by hardware. That means automatically by the microcontroller after each instruction cycle to indicate basically after each instruction cycle. So that means if for any by using instructions, you are either doing some arithmetic or logic or any data movement operation. So after doing that operation by using an instruction, so we'll see what is instruction cycle in detail. There is machine cycle, T states, and instruction cycles. There are T state first, machine cycles, instruction cycles. So there are different types of cycles. So one instruction cycle means, let's say you need certain number of clocks, let's say 10 clocks to complete one instruction, and I'll call that group of 10 clocks as instruction cycle, or that may be 12, that may be 16, and other number of clocks based on different instructions. So whatever number of clocks, so a single instruction takes, I'll call that as instruction cycle. So after an instruction cycle, the parity is actually considered by the hardware and gets updated over here. So indicate an even an odd number of bits, 1 bits in the accumulator, even parity. Okay, so that means you are looking at the accumulator. So the point is, as I said, accumulator is going to come up again and again, or many times, more often than any other registers. And parity is related to accumulator. It actually looks at even parity. So basically, it looks at whether the number of ones are even or odd. Okay, so based on that, even parity is actually calculated and P flag is updated. So regarding RS1 and RS0, I think there is a notes given over here. You can see that. So I think it goes as per the explanation that I gave you. Similarly, TCON, TMOD, so all these registers have different bits. I'll come to this later because at this point, PSW is very basic. You have to refer to this PSW many a times so we can cover it before the instruction set. But after or during instruction set, I'll come to timer counter registers, this timer mode select register, and so on. I'll come to this few slides with the instruction set and the programming. We'll come back, I think, at least couple of times to these slides, but not now. Same for SCON, serial control. We'll come back with serial port programming and instructions. At that time, we'll refer to this, I think, couple of times. Okay, so I'm just keeping same thing for PCON. PCON also is very closely associated with instructions and programming. At this point, it will be simple mug-up. So no need to do mug-up. Understand the logic, and then we'll come back to this all this dump of information. Then there is something called baud rate control. So we haven't shown that earlier, but baud rate control is just selecting the speed of serial communication. Yeah, so I'm going to stop it. Just wait in a minute. Okay, so baud rate is related to the basically speed of communication. Interrupt again will come close with the instruction set and the real programming. Okay, so we'll go with interrupt structure in tomorrow's class, and then we'll possibly start with the instruction set. Instruction set is very important, and for that we are just making our basics strong. Okay, I'll just quickly take attendance. Okay, so we'll stop here. So students who want to ask me questions, they can stay back. And I think one student, Janardhan or so on, someone like that asked me a few questions about the last week's hardware that I had shown. So please stay back if you don't have class. Others may leave. I think Ganeshwaran was the name of the person. Okay, if you have any questions, you can ask.